Hello, and welcome to today's Trainer Education webinar, Members for Life, Innovative Strategies for Better Retention, hosted by HRDQ and presented by Bruce Massa. Today's webinar will last approximately an hour. Before we begin, note that there is a question, or maybe for you it's called a chat box, and it's usually located at the top right-hand corner of your screen. During the webinar, you can use this to submit any questions that you have. And then we'll either answer your questions as we receive them, we'll hold them for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation, or if we run out of time, we certainly will email you after the session with a detailed response. My name is Sarah Montgomery, and I will moderate today's webinar. I am in business development for HRDQ, a publisher of research-based training solutions that improve the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Today's presenter is Bruce Massa, a well-known speaker, mentor, and facilitator. He brings a wealth of experience in executive leadership, retention, and customer service. Bruce has over 35 years of experience advising such prominent brands as Harrods of London, Marriott, and Harley-Davidson, as well as membership organizations such as the National Retail Federation, U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute, and the American Society of Association Executives, just to name a few. He was a senior executive for 21 years with Neiman Marcus. Bruce is the author of the assessment Becoming a Customer Service Star, initially designed for Walt Disney World. Now in its third edition, the assessment has been used by more than 250,000 service professionals around the world. We are pleased to have Bruce share his expertise in member retention with us today. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Bruce.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and welcome to everyone across the country who has tuned into this webinar. I'm delighted to have the opportunity of sharing this presentation, Innovative Strategies for Better Retention. I've had occasion to present similar webinars and keynote presentations across the country with associations and chambers of commerce, and I hope that you find this to be of value for your time and energy in having tuned in. Let me just share with you very briefly what I hope we can accomplish over the next hour. I want to show you some things that I have learned across the country that associations and chambers are doing to better demonstrate appreciation to their members by being able to understand the lifetime value of a member and the cost of turnover when you lose a member and have to replace that person. I'd like to show you some examples of how to understand the vital role that employees play in member retention, and also how to engage your board in better retention activities. There's a movement to talk about top grading your members for better retention. I'd like to show you a little of that. And if you are going to use customer and member retention as a possible subject at an upcoming board retreat or a staff workshop, I would like to show you some ways in which you might be able to incorporate some of these ideas. Let's proceed. I'm going to start right off by just asking you to give us some feedback. You have on the screen a little poll that's asking you in your organization, what is your current retention rate? Are you retaining your members at some number above 95%? On an annualized basis? Are you looking at 90 to 95, 80 to 89, 70 to 79, or below 70%? Give me an indication of what you believe, and if you don't know the exact number, give us your best guesstimate. Take a moment and let you fill out this poll and share some of the results. Looks like about 75 to almost 80% have responded, and it's looking like somewhere in the 80 to 89% is the lead response, with about 35% of you indicating that your retention rate is somewhere in the 80s, 21% indicating that your retention rate is somewhere in the 70s, about 21% below 70, and there's about 19% in the 90 to 95 range, and about 5% of you who are above 95%. Now this number changes a little bit between associations and chambers, but an association that is focused on a very specific industry segment should be running somewhere in the mid to high 80s if you want to be in the norm. If you are above that 90 percentile, you are clearly doing above average in the association world in retaining your members. The Chamber of Commerce world is a little bit lower. If you are able to get up into the low to mid 80s, that's probably a very acceptable area for chambers. Chambers have a little bit more churning of members. They are working with a more general rather than a specific segment of the business population. And so a low 80 number is probably very much in the norm. Again, if you're a chamber and you are anywhere up into that 90 percentile rate, you're doing some exceptional work in member retention as well. Good. Let's move on. This is an important chart, and I'm putting it right up front for you, and we can certainly make this available to you. I've already filled it in with the information that was developed at a board retreat of an association just recently. But one of the things that I encourage you to do is to get your board or your staff or a combination of board and senior staff in a retreat experience to calculate what is the cost of losing one good member. If that member is involved not only in paying their dues, but also they contribute products to your fundraisers and your auctions. Maybe they're contributing some in-kind donations of services, or perhaps they're part of your leadership team. That member is of some value beyond just simply their membership. And I ask people to break up in small groups of 3 or 4 people per group and just simply take this chart and calculate a number that they believe represents what is that member's annual contribution for membership fees, products, services, leadership, donations, and what all. And then I ask them to figure out the cost, if we lost that member, of marketing for a new member. And the easiest calculation is to take your annual marketing budget. In this instance, the marketing budget for this small association was about $50,000. That was one person on staff plus some marketing dollars for mailings and what have you, and divided it by the number of new members that they generated last year. So in the parentheses, you see that this particular association spent $50,000 in marketing that generated 50 new members. Divide 50 into the 50,000, and it works out to be $1,000 for marketing each new member. And then the third category is to simply calculate how long, if we recruit a new member, will it take for us to get that member to participate at the level of the member that we lost. And in this instance, the group decided that 4 years was about the time frame that that member would get back up to the leadership and products and service donations of the member lost. Add the lost revenue from the departing member, add the marketing cost, multiply it by the number of years, and you come up with the cost of member turnover. And I have that little calculation. It's item A plus item B times item C gives you that total. And that total becomes important because you want to use that total when you are talking about member turnover going forward from the time that you have your board or staff calculate this number. I always ask organizations to create a little poster that simply identifies the cost of losing one member is not, in this instance, $9,000. Yours may be $3,000 or $5,000 or $20,000. It's not important what the number is. It's important how you use it. Because what you are going to do is you are going to use member turnover as a financial issue and not a census count. So very often you report to your board on a monthly basis, we lost 5 members last month, or we lost 50 members last year. And it doesn't sound like an impacted issue that anybody is going to get terribly concerned about, especially if you recruited 5 or 6 new members. But the key of getting your staff and your board to really engage in thinking about how they can participate in helping slow down member turnover is to get them to recognize that if they calculated $9,000 was the cost of member turnover and we lost 5 people last month, we really lost 5 times 9, $20,000 or $45,000 in member life. And when you start talking in terms of the value of losing members, and I had an association that had a turnover of about 100 members last year, and they calculated at $9,000, and they multiplied it times 100 members, suddenly they're talking about $90,000 in lost members. That's a substantial number. You get agreement on the cost. You end up use that cost of losing one member to all levels of the organization, and you engage your members to call resigning members and to get involved. I had one association where the board said, this is totally unacceptable. We can't live with this kind of number. It may not be cash out of the bank account, but if it's the real value that you calculate your members to be worth, and the board is being reported that they're losing $45,000 worth of member life in a given month, suddenly the members are asking, what can we be doing? What can you be doing as the executive director? What can you be doing as the president of this association? What can our staff be doing? Quite frankly, what can the board members be doing? And when that question becomes an issue on the table, you have captured your board to suddenly engage in member turnover. And getting them then to call resigned members and find out why they were unhappy, why they left the association or the chamber, to encourage them to come back. Most times they leave because of indifference. They didn't make any business contacts. They didn't get approached by anybody at the last luncheon. It's normally not major things. It's just simply minor relationship issues that don't take hold because they have a perception of what membership is worth, and it didn't happen. And when your board members call those folks, you suddenly have created a member-to-member dialogue, which is much more powerful than anyone on staff following up with a resigning member. It's a very powerful tool, and I encourage you to try it, and I would love to hear success stories or problems that you have to help you think through how to make this a tool that you can use to engage people in member retention. Now, the problem that you have with identifying members who are about to resign or are unhappy is that for the most part, members don't complain. There was a study done called the TARP study, Technical Assistance Research Program, group of Harvard graduates who over a period of about 15 years conducted studies on almost every industry. And when they came to the not-for-profit associations and chambers, the same statistics applied as did the for-profit organizations. People indicated when they had a problem, they didn't complain about it because it was just too much of a hassle. They didn't know where or how to complain, or they just didn't think it would do any good. Think about the last time that you had a problem in a restaurant, a hotel, an airline. We could spend it all day on the airlines. And did you complain or did you not? Most of the time, we don't complain. Less than about 25% of us will seek out someone of authority to go on record that we're unhappy about a product or a service. And so because your members don't share with you on a regular basis when they're unhappy, what happens is that we end up losing them and never really having the opportunity of getting our hands around those situations and those problems. We found a group of members who did not complain but chose not to renew their membership. And we asked them, you didn't complain. You know, would you go back and renew your membership? Would you stay in touch with that organization? And 36% of them said no, they would go back. And the rest of them said, no, I've had it, I'm out of here. We found another group that complained and did not get satisfaction. They found somebody on staff, and they mentioned their problem to, and that staff person either didn't follow up or didn't follow up to a satisfactory level. But the fact that the member had the opportunity to complain and did not get satisfaction, 46% said they would still remain engaged with the organization. Now, that's a 10% improvement for the first category, and the only difference was that that member had the opportunity to go on record that they were unhappy about something. Nothing was satisfied. They didn't get satisfaction or the response they wanted, but they improved their retention rate by 10% just by having the opportunity of going on record that they were frustrated. Now think about this, because many of you have little comment cards that you use at meetings for people to fill out. But think of the power of not leaving the comment card on the table, but rather handing it to people as they are leaving the function and saying, we are very interested in your feedback. If you didn't have a good experience, please let us know. And taking those comment cards that come back and having an individual follow-up. So what you are doing is not only giving people the opportunity of complaining, which improves the retention from 36 to 46%, but if you do reach out and you do satisfy them, and you do manage to resolve their problem, the complaint with a satisfactory result jumps to 77%. And the difference between retaining 36% of your unhappy members or 77% of your unhappy members is very often the difference in either growing your membership or having it remain static. We know word of mouth is a powerful tool. People with a good experience will immediately, in 24 hours, tell 3 to 4 people. Members with a bad experience will find 10 to 12 people. And now with the internet and Twitter and Facebook, a bad experience can reach thousands of people in just minutes. There are organizations that are doing nothing but helping people search the internet for negative comments and bombarding those sites with positive comments about the organization just to neutralize the negative ones because of the impact that the internet has on customer responses and customer satisfaction. I encourage you to look for ways of encouraging member feedback. We have surveys and comment cards. Many of you use focus groups. Identify any way in which the staff can reach out to get their hands around problems. You want your staff to be ambassadors, and you want your board to be ambassadors, always looking for ways of solving problems. One very creative solution that I saw at a Chamber of Commerce recently was an incentive that they offered their staff. The executive director at a morning staff meeting had a handful of local coupons to restaurants and bowling alleys and amusements, and indicated that if any staff member would bring him a problem that he or she heard out in the community, when you're out with your kids on the soccer field, when you're at a church, when you are out at the grocery store, if you hear anybody mention a problem that relates back to our Chamber of Commerce or our association, bring me the individual's name, bring me the story, let me call them up, and let me give them a happy ending to that story. Because people who are out in the community talking negatively about your organization feed on that. It becomes almost the fun thing to do as adults, to tell horror stories about other organization experiences that we had. Got another question for you. When you're serving members, should all members receive the same level of service? Answer this poll. Yes, everyone deserves the same service, or no, some members deserve to be treated better than others. Take a moment and give me your response. Well, over 80% of you have responded, and the results look like about 83% saying yes, everyone deserves the same service, and about 17% of you indicate no, some members deserve to be treated better than others. This is without a doubt one of the most controversial things that I bring to organizations, and in many instances I know they would like to run me out on a rail, but I contend that you do not offer the same service to everyone. That if you look at the airlines and the frequent flyer programs and frequent dining programs, organizations who are in the service industry have all identified that you have to identify ways of, number one, knowing who your best customers are, and two, giving them perks and treating them in ways that make them feel like they are best customers. And it seems that in the late 70s, when American Airlines first introduced the frequent flyer program, within 6 months, every major airline had a frequent flyer program, identifying their best customers, offering them early boarding, better seating, free drinks, and all types of upgrades. Hotels followed suit, restaurants followed suit, and now you cannot even walk into an ice cream shop without them handing you a card and indicating that if you buy 5 ice cream cones over the next year, your 6th one is free. That's a better member program. The process that we are looking at, this top grading for members, really comes out of the work at General Electric when they were using top grading for employees. But in this instance, we've applied it to members. And I would suggest to you that you really have 3 categories of members: your A members, B members, and C members. An A member is someone who's a frequent participant in products and services. They support the institution, they attend your events, and they are the people who you want to promote into leadership of your committees and members of your board. An executive of an association recently said to me an entire roster of A members would be ideal, and I said to her, I'm not sure that you could manage the phone calls if you had an entire organization of A members. Normally, A members represent about 20% of your total membership. Your B members are your largest group. They're about 60% of your membership. They're solid participants. They tend to be loyal to one or two specific programs or services. They will appear at functions on occasion. They do financially support you on occasion. Many of the B members may be new or recently relocated, and they just haven't been able to declare themselves either as A members or are they going to stay as B members. And you build your association around your B membership. To a great degree, these are the folks that we are attempting to appeal and look forward to in terms of showing up at events and participating in our activities and our services. The C members are infrequent users of products. They seldom participate in programs. They are not a financial supporter of the organization. They may not be much more than a name on your roster. For those of you who offer insurance programs for your members, a lot of times members sign up to become participants in your association because they want to buy the insurance program, and they are almost never visible at anything else. Those are C members. They may be good for your insurance program and certainly added to your membership rosters, but you don't want to spend all your time, money, and energy focusing on your C members. If you have a marketing budget, you want to be able to understand who are your A members and retain them at all costs. If an A member calls in with a problem, you want to be as responsive as possible. Now, I'm not saying you don't want to be responsive to B and C members, but the fact remains that if you look at this matrix with an idea of always retaining your A members, upgrading your B members, and look to re-engage your C members, then you've stratified your marketing efforts to putting your money, your time, your energy, and your staff to focusing on the people that you absolutely do not want to lose, which are those A folks, and looking at ways at continuing to re-engage the C people, but not spending a huge amount of resources to re-engage those C folks who have demonstrated to you that they're there really for a single purpose. Ultimately, recognizing those A members establishes the highest level of service and raises the total level of service that everyone receives. Quarterly best customer newsletters have become popular, incentives for frequent participation. I have one organization that offers preferred seating at events to their A members. You do this with your ambassadors very often. You end up having logo merchandise. I had a very creative project with a couple of associations that set up a point program for members' participation, and they got points for everything from serving on committees or boards to showing up at events to attending the annual convention. And those points could be cashed in for logo merchandise of the association. So you not only got your logos out there, but you got people to start incentivizing themselves for participation. Unique membership cards, plaques, and nameplates for your best members. But I would encourage you to recognize your members in a way that definitely identifies who those A people are. And if you don't have a mechanism for going into your membership roster and identifying the A people, it would be a wonderful experience for your senior staff and your board to simply go through the roster and identify who they believe are the A people and to find the criteria that they believe should qualify an A person, so that when that A person shows up, everyone understands this is someone we are not going to lose. We want them for life. You may not be able to write individual thank you notes and cards to all your members, but if the staff focused in on just the A members and some of the B members, you would have a huge impact. This is a Chamber of Commerce with 5 members on staff, a small Midwest organization. They decided that each member of staff would identify 2 people, preferably A and B category people, to write a note each day thanking them for their participation, following up on a problem that they called in about, indicating a new event that was coming up. But each staff member was asked to handwrite a note on chamber cards to 2 people a day, He generated 10 notes a day by those 5 staff members. That's 50 notes a week, and turns out to be over 2,500 notes a year. That has a huge impact. Nobody writes notes anymore. They send emails. They send printed letters. A handwritten thank you note has incredible impact. And while you can't do it to every single one of your members, zero in on the best members. Let them know that they are important, vital parts of your membership roster. Had a number of chambers that have adopted this process of looking at the lifetime value of a member. Earlier, you calculated the cost of one member leaving and replacing that member. Now we're looking at retaining people, and what is the cost, what is the value of being able to retain a member for life? In this instance, I asked people to simply figure out the average revenues of that member, and you can take that off of the earlier chart that you worked with. I think the earlier chart they calculated $1,250. In this instance, the association came up with $1,500 value contributed by an average member in a given year, plus $1,000 of in-kind donations and services, and another $2,500 if they had to go out and hire consultants to serve in the leadership roles that their volunteers were serving. And they calculated in this instance that they believed that an organization was able to be retained for a period of 20 years. And when you calculate out the value of this member times 20 years, the lifetime value is $100,000. Now, why is this calculation important? Because if you have a member who calls in with a problem or has a situation that is raising some difficulty, don't make the decision based on the transaction. Make the decision based on a lifetime value. One of the associations called me recently and said that their president-elect had reserved a table at the annual meeting, and it was a table for 10, and they had sent in a check, and about 3 days before the annual meeting, they called and indicated that their corporate officers were coming in, and none of the executives who were planning to attend the association's annual meeting was going to be available, and that they would like a refund of that cost of that table. The association had a rule that cancellations within 5 days were not refundable, and immediately they got into a huge concern over telling their president-elect that the policy did not allow for a refund of that table. When I asked them to calculate what the value of this president-elect and his organization was to the organization over the next 20 years, the value came out to be considerably more than $100,000. And I said, you know, if you have a $100,000 customer who's presenting you a problem that they didn't create, they didn't know that their corporate executives were coming in, how would you resolve this in a way that was acceptable to the association and at the same time met the needs of this member? And they came back with a very creative alternative. They offered the executive the opportunity of taking the cost of that table and simply applying it to other programs and services throughout the year. So the organization got credit for the table they paid for. The association didn't have to cut a check to refund any money. They didn't violate their policy, but they took a very different approach when they thought about this not being an $800 table, but being a $100,000 customer. And the value of getting people thinking in terms of how does the receptionist even answer the phone or get back to people when she puts them on hold if they are a $100,000 customer that might be different than just the average person calling in wanting to speak to someone on staff. Think about it. It's a very, very powerful leadership tool. Got another poll for you. How many years can you expect to retain the average participating B member in your organization? 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10, 10 to 20? Or do you think that over 20 years is a legitimate number? about halfway, but 40% of you still are waiting to vote. If we were all in a room together rather than on a one-way webinar, this would be a great question to discuss and have you share some of your thoughts and ideas. It looks like about 40% of you are indicating 5 to 10 years is the appropriate retention expectation of a member. About 36% are saying 3 to 5 years. I have 7% of you in the 10 to 20 year category and 5% of you indicating over 20 years. I'm sorry that we're not able to have a face-to-face conversation. I think that you would have some interesting points to make on your indications. So 5 to 10 years seems to be the plurality here. Good. Let's go on. When you are working with member retention with your board and staff, I would encourage you to focus on member retention as a subject that everybody can relate to, regardless of their role on the board or their role on the staff. Everyone affects member retention. Determining the cost of member turnover, with that earlier chart that we showed, allow that to be posted everywhere so that people really think in terms of the impact of losing a member. Think about what the criteria might be for identifying your A members, B members, and C members, and then think of ways that you can retain A's, upgrade the B's, and simply re-engage the C members. Use this lifetime value of a member calculation to get people to think about how we best make decisions that keep people around for the maximum number of years possible, and find ways that the board and staff can continue to apply these member retention tools into their daily activities. I want to tell you a story. So many of us talk about our organizations as being a home away from home, and our staff are close and cohesive and feel like an extended family. Years ago, I had an organization. It was not a chamber or an association organization. It was a dog kennel over in West Michigan that became very infatuated by the idea of having a customer retention program. And when we had a workshop for the staff and the leadership, they got into a big discussion over whether the pet owners or the pets were their primary customers. And they liked the idea of writing notes to their customers, and from that idea and the opportunity of retaining people for the life of that pet, the organization started to generate mailings that were addressed not to the pet owners, but to the pets themselves. And our golden retriever, Taffy, started receiving mail from the Holiday Kennel. Let me read you a few of these cards. Dear Taffy, it's time again. Remember last year what fun you had at the Holiday Kennel's annual Memorial Day picnic featuring all the hot dogs you could eat? Has Bruce made your reservation for the Memorial Day weekend? Tell him to hurry. The gang is bigger than ever and the space is limited. Bring this card and save $5. Well, I come home and my sons are reading Taffy the mail and pointing to the breakfast bar where the rest of the bills were sitting. But we obviously had to check Taffy into the Holiday Kennels for the annual Memorial Day weekend. Now, they're just trying to get us to think about the Holiday Kennels while we're planning weekends away from home. But it had a huge effect because the kids loved reading Taffy her mail. And the fact that Taffy was getting mail instead of my wife Annie and I seemed to be entertaining for all of us. Here's another card. Howdy, partner. Greeting from Camp Holiday. Ready for the last roundup of the summer? Labor Day weekend is almost here, and we want to make sure that we have a steak with your name on it for our all-beef cookout and Western Jamboree. Call your buddy Horace Holiday and reserve a bunk bed and a steak for you now. Of course, Taffy didn't spend the weekend in a bunk bed, but the idea that the dogs were going to have a party and going to have fun seemed to just endear everybody to the idea of Taffy getting mail. During the Kuwait little war that we had in the Middle East, Taffy got a card from the Holiday Kennels that said, Dear Taffy, summer's off to a great start with the nation welcoming home the troops from the Middle East. While there won't be any fireworks at the Holiday Kennels, We wave our flags proudly and salute the troops at our own 4th of July party. We don't want you to miss out on the fun, so have Bruce make your reservation today as space is limited, and bring this special bonus card with you, and you'll receive your very own flag to take home. Well, the kids were adamant that Taffy spend the 4th of July weekend at the holiday kennels because we were going away that weekend, and when we picked her up, Taffy had a little American flag attached to her collar. We were all so proud. But this one really caught me off guard because it came a year later and was addressed not to Taffy, but it was addressed to me. Dear Bruce, please join us at noon on Saturday, April 18th for some holiday fun and bring Taffy to the Holiday Kennel's 2nd annual Easter Bone Hunt. Help your favorite pet look for prizes and treats, and the Easter Bunny will be here to pose for pictures with your pet for a $1 donation to the Humane Society. Tour the kennels, check your schedule, and reserve the best rooms for Taffy over the coming holiday weekends. Please have Taffy bring her leash. Well, the boys were adamant that Taffy go to the Easter Bone Hunt, so we loaded her up in the car. We drove out. They had all kinds of toys and snacks hidden in the grass. So they gave us a basket that kids ran around with Taffy to find the treats. And suddenly we see this guy sitting in an Easter Bunny costume with a sign saying that a picture of your pet for a donation to the Humane Society. So we put Taffy in the Easter Bunny's lap, and we get this cute little Polaroid picture in a paper frame, greetings from Camp Holiday. Now here's what makes this so crazy. Come to our house for the last 15, 20 years. You find pictures of my wife and I at various events, pictures of our 2 sons now married with kids of their own, pictures of the grandchildren. And though Taffy is no longer with us, there's still a picture of Taffy and the Easter Bunny sitting on the piano. And what makes it so ludicrous is we're Jewish. But tell me what the problem is when we have one organization that's treating dogs like guests when so many organizations in the service industry are treating their guests like dogs. Hope you enjoyed that story. It's one of my favorites. Why aren't members retained? Simple chart from the TARP study again. 1% of your members die, 3% move away, 13% find other affiliations for the products or services they're looking for, 15% are specifically dissatisfied with a particular product or service, but 68% leave because of a feeling of indifference. They didn't feel engaged. They didn't feel they got value for their membership. They didn't meet other people. They were not recognized and appreciated. So the bottom line, I would challenge you to think about what you sell and how do you address member retention. By training your staff to be member-focused in these 5 areas, we all know that things only get done when they're measured. And this instrument, Becoming a Customer Service Star, is a simple way for you to focus your staff on ways to increase member retention quickly. The 5 dimensions that participants work on in the assessment include ways in which they feel positive toward customers, they encourage customer feedback, they respond to customer problems, they do everything that's building long-term relationships, and they're finding ways daily to exceed people's expectations. Let me share just a few personal stories on how organizations in the not-for-profit arena have used the STAR to success. One of my favorite is the Security Industry Association up in Washington, D.C. They created a year-long theme on becoming customer-driven. They began with a staff and a board 2-day retreat that used the Customer Service Star to introduce the concept of becoming customer-driven, and they created over 24 major initiatives, including visitations of their staff out to member facilities, all kinds of ways in which they identified their A, B, and C members and really built a model of never losing an A member, but they got everyone on the board and staff to focus on member retention and customer satisfaction in a campaign that was a year-long program. Both the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute and the American Society of Association Executives have initiated courses in their certification curriculum that address member retention. I have had the pleasure for the last almost 10 years of being on the staff of the U.S. Chamber Institute teaching member retention, and have had a couple of opportunities at both the national and state levels, Society of Association Executives, in presenting programs. But the STAR has been a very, very successful instrument used as part of that curriculum over the past several years. I challenge you to think about, what do you sell? You sell just memberships, programs, and activities? Are you involved with promoting networking? Is your association or chamber focused on legislative influence? I would suggest to you that regardless of what area of association or chamber life you like to market and specialize in, that first and foremost, what you sell is satisfaction. The satisfaction of your members to turn to your organization as their prime source for belonging. And when you sell member satisfaction, you are really taking your organization to an entire new level of service. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of my presentation. I turn this over now to you and to Sarah to please submit any questions. And Sarah, would you like to take over at this point?
Absolutely, Bruce. Thank you. Go ahead and keep sending in your questions. We do have some that have come in throughout the presentation, so I'm going to jump right in here and start. But go ahead and keep sending those in to us, and if we run out of time, we will make sure that we email you a response, and I certainly can speak to you about a response as well. So you'll certainly get your questions answered. Our first response, our first question here, Bruce, comes from Michelle, and Michelle asks, what specific assignments can we give to board members to impact member retention?
Michelle, good question. I appreciate you raising that. You know, possibly the most important assignment is to have board members follow up with members who have dropped their membership. They'll learn what disappointments people have experienced, and they will possibly even save a few members in the process to the organization. I think that when the board members recognize the importance of member retention, they become more visible at functions, wearing their board member name tag, going up and greeting people they don't know, sitting with people at functions they don't know. You know, I think one of the most detrimental things to member retention is when you have all of your board members and all of your ambassadors sitting at one table in the front of the room, and they never mingle with the rest of the membership. I love when you have a board member assigned to each table as somewhat of a leadership sponsor. But all of those opportunities to engage your board in interacting with members, and especially those members who have expressed some disappointment, have great value.
Great, thank you. And our next question here comes from Jerry. Jerry asks, how do we assure that an employee doesn't abuse, you know, some of the authority that they may have given them, you know, and give away the ship when they're taking care of members? How do they find that balance of what's acceptable for the organization, but then also will satisfy that member?
Probably about 20 years ago, Jerry, the word empowerment found its way into organization life. And many of us thought that empowerment was an opportunity to give the front line the authority that we had really reserved up until that time for middle management, to engage in solving customer problems and to engage in making decisions without escalating those situations to higher levels of the organization. But with empowerment comes parameters, and empowerment without parameters is chaos. So if you are implementing a program that empowers frontline people to engage in decision-making with regard to member problems, they also need to know parameters. Marriott had one of the great examples of empowerment programs back in the 90s when they went through their organization and they literally identified what they would have people do at every level of the organization. So that front desk clerk was given the authority of being able to credit people's bills of up to 10% to try to satisfy a concern. If they couldn't resolve it with a 10% adjustment, they had to refer it to the on-duty manager. That individual had an authority to credit up to 25% of a particular item on a bill. If they couldn't handle it, it got referred. Now the key is to not keep referring people up the line, but to solve the problem. But if people at every level have something they can offer the customer in the way of a resolution, and they know what parameters they are given, then you have a problem-solving organization that's focusing on member retention. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. Our next question here is from Anika, and I'm going to summarize a little bit here. It appears as though they are with a fraternal organization, and the question is around how can the national organization impact and become impacted with member retention when so much is set at the local chapter level. So members are, really involved in the local chapter. They're not really involved too much at the national level. But what can people at the national organizational level, what can they do to impact those chapters, which then impacts those members?
I'm guessing a little bit about the structure of the organization that poses this question. Because it's going to be a bit different for every organization. But if you look at, let's just take the chamber structure where you have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce out of Washington, D.C. that is generating programs and activities, but members are impacted at the local and the state level chambers. I would still encourage you to find those tools and those ways that at the national level you can provide down to the local chapters member retention opportunities. Find ways of repackaging any one of the ideas that you find helpful out of this presentation and see if there's a way that you can supply it to those local chapters. If you can't directly impact customers at the national level because you don't have that direct relationship, then what you hopefully can do is be a resource to those local organizations so that they can better get their hands around member retention and deal with member turnover in a more comprehensive manner. The key with member turnover is that it tends to be an area that we ignore. We only deal with it when it becomes a dollar issue. And so we might indicate that there's a problem, that we saw a drop in membership last year, but nobody's terribly concerned if we throw out a number or a census number. If we tell them that we had a 20% drop in our dues revenues, that suddenly becomes something that everybody focuses in on. So I think that helping organizations understand at the local level the importance of looking at member retention from a dollar value rather than a census value could be a great starting point. If the individual, was it Anita that sent that question in, I would like to have a more specific dialogue. I would encourage you to connect with Sarah at the conclusion of this session. Sarah will tell you how you can do that, and then perhaps we can explore that in a little bit more depth.
Great. Thank you very much, Bruce. Thank you. And our last two questions here, it looks like we have a good amount of our population on the line today are working in higher education realm. So they're primarily on college retention teams. So they're looking to, continue to keep students, at their college, at their university. And we have a couple general questions here asking if you have any experience around the university segment, if there's ways in which the Becoming a Customer Service Star has been used in those areas, if you can give us any kind of suggestions on how to reach out to those students, in relation strictly to a college retention team.
That's a great audience, and I appreciate those of you who are involved with higher education for tuning in today. I had the very good experience of being involved with Michigan State University in Lansing, Michigan over a period of probably 7 or 8 years. At different times, I was working with the Housing and Food Service Group. They were the initial folks that sought me out to try to become more customer-driven. The Dean of Student Services at one point had me working with all of the non-academic side of the university, and at one point I was even involved with the athletic department after the Spartans won the NCAA national championship and wanted to be more national in their prominence in the way that they treated the press and the way they treated customers and alumni. But going back to the earlier experience, when you look at students as customers, certainly in those service areas like housing and food services and student services, even in the admission office or the way that scholarship administration works, there's a tendency to believe that students are just simply a necessary evil that we have to deal with. And it's certainly a transition in thinking to look at students as customers. But we ended up with a lot of ideas that came out of the leadership teams and the resident assistants who managed a lot of the housing and food service activities in ways in which they could treat students as customers. They ended up hanging feedback cards on doorknobs when they went in and did maintenance in rooms to make sure that the repair was done appropriately and the room was left the way it was found. They were looking for feedback from students on their favorite items and created favorite items of the week in each of the student cafeterias and food halls. I think that there is a huge opportunity to just simply toss out the concept of how do we look at our student population as customers and then think of ourselves as customers and create that parallel. I laud you for being online today and for thinking about this initiative in a higher education environment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Bruce. If we did not get a chance to answer your question, you will receive an emailed response directly. And for more detail, things like that, we certainly can discuss on the phone as well and connect directly with Bruce. As an exclusive offer, you do receive 20% off any Becoming a Customer Service Star product at our website. It's HRDQ.com. Bruce, if you could move to our final slide, please. And go ahead and use the coupon code MEMBERWEBINAR at checkout. Now, there's a facilitator guide. You can take a look at it, 30-day return policy on any of the materials. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. We really appreciate your time, and we hope you found today's webinar informative.
I thank all of you for joining us and wish you the very best in your member retention efforts. Have a great day.